Shadow of Mordor was a brilliant game, wasn't it? Sure, it deviated somewhat from Tolkien's Lord of the Rings canon, and the final battle was laughable, but it was incredibly good fun, and it introduced a properly brilliant innovation into the world of video games. Yes, I mean the Nemesis system, that slowly tailors the enemy orcs you fight over the course of the game, the unique events of your own playthrough, eventually breeding a nemesis for you, an orc who represents your ultimate enemy down on the battlefield. And then, in 2017, Shadow of War was announced, with Monolith promising that the Nemesis system would be further enhanced and huge battles would be happening, to give us the same sense of scale that Peter Jackson's movies smacked us right in the eyeballs with. And lo, there was much rejoicing. And then we all found out that the game would be packed to the gills with microtransactions, and the endgame will be a massive grindfest, unless you spent money on it. And lo, the rejoicing did turneth into much or bitching. As a result, we never did a cracked one-out video on it. We did an emotes video instead, called Shadow of Greed. Hush your gob. Anyway, look, the point is that I made a promise to myself back then. I vowed that if they took the microtransactions out, I would give the game a try. And they did. So today, as a result of that, we're cracking one out with Middle-earth: Shadow of War. We usually begin with the story of the games we talk about, but today I fancy a change, and as such we're going to be talking about the gameplay first. What we're not doing though, is talking about the two things we usually talk about in an open world game. I genuinely hate you. I mean, sure, you have to do those two things, but they're not the thing that sets the game apart from other open worlders. The thing that does is the Nemesis system. So let's dig down a bit deeper into what makes it so special. We'll start by using a nice, short, 3-word phrase to sum up the entire thing. Procedurally generated orcs. Basically, Mordor is packed to the gills with orcs, uruks, and orlogs. Dude, don't quote Sean Bean. You'll die within the next hour and a half. Ah, well. Anyway. So, you've got the denizens of Mordor knocking about all over the place. Some of them are nameless nobodies, of course, but some of them already have names, and in fact, a nameless nobody gets a name if it manages to kill you. That's where it gets interesting, because once an orc or a troll has a name, they also get a rarity rating, a title, and a class, as well as a variety of different traits, both positive and negative. If we take the reaction to ranged attacks as an example, you've got the pretty self-explanatory arrow proof at one end of the spectrum, while you've got soft-headed at the other end, which means the orc in question will take extra damage from headshots. Fuck you, I can aim. So if they murder you, they get promoted, get new traits, and generally proceed to make your life miserable. If you kill them, however, well, they don't necessarily stay dead. Like, hardly ever, to be honest. Despite being set on fire, poisoned, thrown off a cliff, gleefully impaled on spiky bits, eaten by murder kittens. Bloody Sauron and his necromantic ways. If killing them is basically pointless, what do you do instead? Simple! Subjugate them and put your mark on them and make them work for you! Make them into your bodyguards! Send them to infiltrate other forts and decimate the war chief's forces from within! Cry happy tears over having your own army of foul-smelling gobshites! Well, yes, They do have a tendency to suddenly rock up and say, "I don't fancy being your bitch today, so if you don't mind, I'm going to stab you." It'd be annoying if I wasn't used to it, but that's a bi-weekly occurrence with you around, so... Sometimes though, one of the annoying little orc bastards will have a trait designed purely to spoil your fun, namely Iron Will. You can probably guess what it does. So, since you can't mentally subjugate the little turds, it's time to use the other trick up your sleeve and shame them, making them drop a few levels so they might be easier to subjugate the next time your paths cross. That's not all it can do though, because sometimes by random chance it'll send them stark raving fucking bonkers, and then one of two things will happen. Outcome 1 is derangement, where you strip away their sanity and make them into broken, pathetic creatures that can only say a handful of phrases, or giggle, or sometimes make clicking noises, or wail that they don't want the fort, or randomly shout, "Love me!" Or, go, "Woo wee woo woo!" That's the nice version of what can happen. Outcome 2 is the not so nice one, because outcome 2 is where they become a maniac. With this one, they still go batshit, but instead of losing levels, they gain levels. Lots of levels in fact, enough levels to turn them into a psychotic murder tank, or possibly a living fucking nightmare. I'll give you an example. There was this one Orlog I encountered. His name was Gaz. I wanted him in my army, but unfortunately he had that bloody Iron Will perk, so I shamed him 4 times in fact, and the 4th time I shamed him, he turned into a maniac, went from level 1 to 51 and decided he was someone else. Anyway, I cured his new personality disorder by lopping his head off. So much for having that big fucker in my armour. Now that we've mentioned lopping heads off, let's talk about the combat. Just like with Shadow of Mordor, it's a variant of the Arkham formula, but with a sword, a dagger, a magic bow, and the ability to mount creatures. Not like that, you tart. Now sure, the combat can occasionally be a little bit clunky, usually when Talion forgets what each button does like a complete tit, but in spite of that, the combat's still nicely satisfying, especially when you use some of the abilities in conjunction with your movement abilities. I'm not going to list them all, but I am going to mention one in particular, the move that is effectively the double jump. Trust me, try double jumping into a shadow kill and jumping a solid 93 miles across the map. See, it's beyond satisfying when you pull it off. Anyway, let's see. Nemesis system, combat, movement, what am I missing? Oh, fortress sieges. Once you've built up your army to a standard you're happy with, you can lay siege to the fort in your local area, and this genuinely provides some of the greatest moments in the game. Why? Well, you know the Siege of Helm's Deep, basically that, but with you doing the attacking, and then setting up one of your orc babies as a new overlord, but like, with you as the power behind the throne. Now that gameplay's out of the way, we can talk about the story, and I have to say that as much as I like the game, I'm very glad that it's non-canon, because this bit of Lord of the Rings fan wank, while being a fun game, utterly butt-fucks Tolkien's lore. But we'll gloss over that. Look, just put some subtitles in when you want to bitch, alright? Otherwise we'll be here all fucking week, alright? Anyway, yes, the story has a heavy focus on the relationship between our hero, Talion, and the Bright Lord Celebrimbor. the game picks up where Shadow of Mordor left off, with you and the glowy dead elf boy forging a new ring of power. This one, however, is pure. It's free of Sauron's influence, and towards the end of the game, we learn that this ring is capable of freeing the Nazgul from their eternal torment. That comes with a whole slew of implications, that does. The key one being that this ring is the single most powerful object in the land of Mordor, and could potentially dethrone the Dark Lord. Anyway, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Back to the start, where we see that Shelob's watching us forge the brand new ring, and also that Shelob is now a fit bird with breasts. Therefore, I shall be calling her Spider Tits for the rest of this video. She kidnaps Celebrimbor, and of course, we go off to retrieve our glowy dead elf bro, but once we reach Spider Tits' lair, she demands the new ring in exchange for getting our Wraith buddy back. Now, personally, I'd keep the ring, because it's one of the only things keeping us alive, which bonding with Celebrimbor also does, but unlike him, the damn ring won't be a sulky elf bastard who inevitably ends up shanking me in the back, but apparently that's not allowed, so we give Spider Tits the ring. Dude, don't use up all your anger now, you won't have any left for the ending. Mind you, at this point in the narrative, Celebrimbor's probably about as angry as you. Don't worry though, we get the ring back, then kill a Nazgul, and then meet and enslave an Orlok called Bruise, raid a fort, meet Ratbag again, defend that same fort, and then you find out that Bruce secretly had iron will and was only pretending to be my loyal slave before unleashing his sudden but inevitable betrayal. So it's time for the sudden but inevitable shaming and derangement, you fat fuck! Yeah, that happens a lot. Who knew that you can't trust orcs? Seriously, you'll be walking along minding your own business and suddenly you'll hear this.
Richard! I screamed for help, but you left me to die. Time to hear your screams.
See? After all I did for him too, just because I let him die that one time when I went for a shit and forgot to pause. Anyway, it was his fault. If he wasn't such a shit orc, he wouldn't have died, would he? QED, bitches. I'm not kidding. The only orc who doesn't betray you is Ratbag. He knows which side his bread's buttered. After that, the narrative sort of goes a bit non-canon. I mean, it's already non-canon, but now it goes really non-canon, because, oh look, now Isildur, heir of Elendil, is one of the Nazgul. You see, this is where me and Subtitle Guy have our big divergence. Although we both agree that the game's story has almost nothing to do with the vast body of lore that Tolkien wrote, I'm okay with that, since I can live with the fact that the game is 100% non-canon. Take Isildur for instance. The Nazgul were the 9 mortal men corrupted by the rings of power Sauron had given to them, and Isildur sure as shit wasn't one of them. Now yes, Monolith added a cutscene in to explain how he became a Nazgul, but here's the problem. We already know how Isildur died. Tolkien wrote about it, and the version Monolith shows in the How I Became a Nazgul cutscene is not how he died. It's much the same story with Helm Hammerhand, who actually died about 700 years before the game said he did, and yet again, he was not a fucking ring wraith. But that's fine, because the game also decided to make Talion one of the Nazgul after he took Isildur's ring, meaning that the character we played as is one of the 9 who attacked Frodo on Weathertop. Yeah, this game has a fetish for doing stupid things with rings, like when Eltariel also betrays me and takes the new ring we made just after Celebrimbor betrayed me, because apparently elves are about as trustworthy as fucking orcs. And that causes problems with the law. Major fucking problems with the law. Specifically with Frodo's quest to destroy the One Ring in the Cracks of Doom. You see, her having that new ring during the events of Lord of the Rings retroactively causes a plot hole in the original books. Namely, this. If she had the new ring, and she was in Mordor at the time, why didn't she get off her fat ass to help Frodo? However, we'll end this section by looking at the part of the story that best sums up how far Monolith went off the rails in terms of the plot. Yes, it's spider tits. And as you may have guessed, this is the bit Subtitle Guy hates the most, because the bits with Isildur and Talion being ring wraiths are shit, but they at least make a modicum of sense. It makes sense for Isildur to be the one Talion encounters, since seeing him would shock our hero out of his slide towards being the next Dark Lord. And it makes sense that Talion would fall to the influence of the ring he's wearing, because that is the entire fucking point of the rings in the first place. Hell, even Frodo succumbed. No, the problem is the other bit, where Talion ended up as one of the 9, and given how this plot point feels like it involves monoliths sucking themselves off, it wouldn't surprise me if they come out and say Talion was the one who stabbed Frodo. Yeah, he's not even joking though. He still refuses to buy any EA game after the Mass Effect 3 ending debacle. So basically, those changes, while being bollocks, do at least make some kind of sense. But Shelob? I mean, come on, it's fucking Shelob! Just look at her. She's a hideous, spider-shaped mound of wobbling manky flesh, inside which lurks a soul made of pure malice and hunger, and she's a cannibal too, feasting on her own young. You're really going to try and turn that into this? Now, before anyone jumps about, having an epi, let's be clear on what we're not complaining about here. You see, when the game first came out, a lot of people pissed and moaned about Shelob being sexualised. That is very definitely not what we're complaining about here, because it's a stupid complaint. Wearing a dress does not make a female character sexualised, and even if it did, who cares? Seriously, they could have you play as Galadriel for most of the game, wearing nothing but nipple tassels, and have her defeat her enemies by jizzing out healing rays of white light from her magical, elven minge box, and I wouldn't bat an eyelid. No, what pisses us both off is not that they made Shelob fit, it's the fact they made Shelob good. Seriously, what kind of debilitating fucking head injury does it require for someone to take a look at one of the most vile, evil creatures in all of Middle-earth and go, yes, we must make people see that Shelob is a poor, misunderstood woman who is actually stunning and brave and not a monstrous cannibalistic spider demon at all. Just fuck off. Shelob is not a good guy, nor is she a well-intentioned extremist who just wants Sauron's evil stopped. She's a ball of fucking evil, shaped like an 8-legged predator that eats her own kids. There is nothing nice or redeemable or misunderstood about a vicious black-hearted spider spawn that exists solely to feed. I mean, she is the daughter of Ungoliant, who quite possibly died by getting so hungry she ate herself to death. You're seriously going to tell me that spawned a raven herd temptress? Fuck right off. And no, despite what the game's mobile companion app says, she's not a fucking Maya either. Whether you did it for ideological reasons or just by being high as balls during every single concept meeting, Monolith, you could piss off with this nonsense. Anyway, enough of that, since I think Subtitle Guy has started foaming at the mouth. Which means it's rating time. It's a crying shame that the story is so monumentally fucked, because the truth of the matter is that now the microtransactions are gone, Shadow of War is actually a really good, if occasionally flawed game. There's a few control issues here and there, but in general, the combat's brilliant, the movement is nice and fast, and the Nemesis system is still one of the greatest innovations in the world of video games. So what it means is that bizarrely, this game is both easy and hard to recommend. If you're the kind of person who can forgive a poor story when the gameplay is up to snuff, then there's every chance you'll have a whale of a time playing Shadow of War. Plus, you get to fly about on a mini dragon, although, alas, it's not purple, so I can't call it Spyro. If you're not that kind of person, then you probably want to see every copy of the game burned, and then sow the ground with salt. That leaves us in a conundrum, because neither of us have a sodding clue how to rate it. So in that case, bugger it, let's just quote something that makes us both laugh, which means our rating is, I don't want the fault. And on that shocking display of arachno bigotry, it's time to end. Thanks very much for watching. I am AutomaTitan, and remember, if you don't actually have a war horn of Gondor, then you shouldn't invoke the ancient prophecy. Sorry dude, you quoted Sean Bean. Now I'm gonna borrow me the shit out of you. I can't. It's written in the ancient tome of law. Sean Bean's contract. Subtitle Guy. Subtitle Guy. Oh yes, I finally did it. I'm finally rid of him. He's finally gone, and he's never coming back.